Hi guys and girls and kittens, and welcome to the I Need a Magic show. So in this video I'm going to show you a kick-ass feature we're building in Magic these days, which is the ability to create backend API workflows or endpoints or whatever you wish really, without actually coding. It's entirely based upon low code and no code. However, instead of me explaining it, let me show you how it works. So I go to create, I go to HyperID. We're still using HyperID integrated development environment. So arguably this is like low code and no code for like software developers if you wish, because you still actually see the code. Now if I expand modules here and I create a folder and I call mine YouTube demo, right? Now, this effectively creates a module for me in Magic, which you probably know if you have followed some of my previous videos. Now, what's different here is that if I now create a new file, let's say I want to create an HTTP post endpoint that's called purchase.post.hl. So this part obviously declares a post HTTP endpoint of with Hyperlambda, and the endpoint's name is purchase. Now I actually have an HTTP endpoint and a Hyperlambda file. However, what's different is that I can now create every single piece of code inside of this file without coding. Declaratively using composables or actions, orchestrating actions into workflows. Let me illustrate how it works by first creating a description here. This endpoint allows the user to perform a purchase. It is very cool, right? So I've now applied the description to my endpoint. Then let's provide an argument. Okay, name, string, email, string, card, string, month, exp, month, string, exp, year. I'm not really entirely sure if these are integers but it doesn't matter. CVS, string, and let me see, name, email, card, expiration month, expiration year, CVS, amount, and decimal. Now, if you pay close attention now, you probably realize that this is an HTTP endpoint that allows people to purchase using some sort of like amount. Now, if I save this file now and I go to manage, then I can install plugins. Plugins actually, because the entirety of the activity / workflow execution engine is entirely modular, which means that if I install a plugin, I can be given additional actions. However, we still haven't really talked about what an action is. So let me show you here the new part of HyperID here, which is basically just a tiny little bugger down left here that's called Toolbox. So what is the Toolbox? Well, let me illustrate it by, for instance, doing log create. Okay, type, info, message. This is hello world from my log. Args, add, email, name. Okay. Save the file. Now, if I open up my endpoints in a different browser window and I find this guy whose name is purchase, and I invoke it, I pass in name, John Doe, email, howdy@world.com. I can just delete the rest of the guys, but let's just keep them for simplicity. Try it out. I open up my log. Now in a third tab, I will see this is hello from my log. So this execute invocation here, what it's basically doing, it's executing what I refer to as an action. And an action is arguably defined as the smallest piece or an atomic piece of Hyperlambda code. The smallest possible Hyperlambda code that actually does something useful. This particular action just logs, right? If I add another one behind here, and by the way, we have filtering support. So if I now write email in top left corner here, you will see it filters my toolbox, allowing me to send an email. Okay, name, email, subject, hello from Hyperlambda. This was sent from YouTube video. Now, if I click OK here now, and I save it, and I click F5, I can also debug the actions internally from directly within HyperID. I write Thomas Hansen, thomas@iniro.io, and I just ignore the rest of my arguments here. I click OK. You will see it actually shows me the result of every single action as it is being consecutively executed. Basically, that defines a workflow. A workflow is a chained list of actions or activities, if you wish. And as you can see here, first it invokes log create, then it invokes email send. If I now go and check my email, of course, I'm going to be having an email. I'm not going to do that because that allows me, that implies I'm going to have to like blur my screen, and you're going to be wasting time on that. Now, still, I can code any amount of Hyperlambda code and intermix in between these actions any ways I see fit. And in fact, we have several examples of that that we are about to release, among other things, in, for instance, the registration module that allows us to actually register users in the system entirely using these actions. So now, as you can see here, these are my current actions here: get IP, blah, 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 context, OpenAI stuff, reCAPTCHA, authenticate, markdown, publish socket message, etc., etc., execute workflows, compile C# code. Now, here comes the kicker. If I now go to plugin and I install Stripe payments, for instance, and I now go back to my actions, you will see I have a bunch of additional actions here. If I now open the same file here now, you will see here now at the bottom, you will see that all of a sudden I have a lot of Stripe actions. So now let's try to actually use these Stripe actions to actually create useful code, right? With zero coding, which is kind of like the reasons why I created the endpoint taking name, email, card, month, year, CVS, and amount in the first place. So now let's create a purchasing HTTP web API post bugger. Okay, Stripe create customer. Name, email, IP address, we can ignore, it's optional. So we've now created the customer in our Stripe account. Now we need to create a payment method. Okay, card number, card, expiration month, expiration year, CVS, and customer ID. And here comes the kicker. Because my previous action, the previous action I invoked, actually returns the customer ID as it creates a customer ID object within Stripe. This allows me to reference the return value of my previous actions inside of my workflow. So now, as you can see here, this last action here, it is actually referencing the return value of my previous action. This allows me to chain my actions together. Now let's create a payment, create payment, customer ID. Yet again, we're going to use the customer ID from one of our previous actions. Then we're going to use the payment method ID returned by Stripe from our previous action. Then let's reference the amount as we're giving it as input from the client, and then let's just use currency, USD. Okay. Now, if I at the bottom here, I hold down Option, click F or Alt F on Windows to give focus to the top left filtering bugger here. I write return dash. Then one of my snippets, you see at the bottom below my actions are snippets that are basically copy and paste type of snippets that I can just click, and it will inject that particular Hyperlambda code inside of my Hyperlambda code wherever I happen to have the carrots focus. Return last action. Now it returns the result of this last action, and this last action is the bugger that actually creates our payment. If I now save this guy, and I click F5, and of course I'm using Stripe's test account. So my card number becomes 4242, because that is the test card Stripe allows you to test with. Expiration month 8, 2026, CVS 314, amount 55. And as you can see here now, it's debugging my workflow and successfully creating a payment in my Stripe account. And this is the reference, the ID, to a test payment in our test Stripe account. actually. And if you look through here, you see Stripe create customer, Stripe create payment method, Stripe create payment, and it's done. Now, if I go to my endpoint, I refresh, I filter on purchase. I now have an HTTP endpoint taking this JSON payload that actually creates a Stripe payment. And I can keep on having a go at it by, for instance, if I now want to, let's say I want to inject one guy after, after the create customer. Okay, I want to do a log entry. Option F or Alt F on Windows, log create, type info, customer was successfully created, add, name, add, email, okay. And now it's invoking the log action after it's creating the customer. And I can keep on going, and I don't have to use the wizard. I can also just copy and paste this code, mark this code here, copy it. And then after the create payment method, okay, paste it in, payment method successfully created and associated with user. Then I can go further down here, create payment successfully received, let's party. And I save it, I go back here now, and invoke this guy, Thomas Hansen. Remember, this is our Stripe, demo account, so the card number becomes 42. And the expiration month becomes 8, and the expiration year 2026, and the CVS 314, and let's do 555.55 in amount. Try it out. Foo is not valid at blah.com. And something went wrong, so let's see what happened. Something went wrong. 6 seconds ago, who is not, customer was successfully okay, so it created a, and it associated it with, let's see, invalid integer. Okay, let's do. So it is beta, right? It is highly beta, I need to emphasize. Now, if we go to our log, you will see customer successfully created, payment method successfully created, and let's party, right? Now, I can add any amount of business logic into this as I see fit. For instance, if I now want to save the customer ID or an associated with the payment or whatever, then of course SQL dash filtering on here, SQL execute allows me to choose my database type, SQLite, and of course this isn't going to work because I actually don't have a database, right? Well, I do have Stripe, I guess. Insert into customers. Let's see if we can get. You know what? I'm not going to mess around with SQL in this video. It's already long enough as it is. The point is, I can actually chain these guys together to create fairly complex business logic without having to code at all. It is still code, fundamentally, right? I mean, there's no difference between this and the stuff I'm writing in Visual Studio Code when I'm manually writing code. The difference, of course, is that this is much simpler because it's like drag and drop-ish type of, code creation, right? And it's declarative code. It's 100% declarative based upon meta programming and, declarative programming languages. And it's low code and no code, if you wish. So anyways, that was it for today's YouTube video. By the way, Happy New Year and all that beautiful stuff. And remember to like and subscribe and share it with your friends. And thank you for watching. Have a nice day.